All right. Welcome back to the second half of NEAM, Nebraska Entertainment Monthly. And we are here with Debbie Griffith, who is in accounting. So, Debbie, talk to me about it takes to, what it entails to really get started financially for a film.
Okay, well, that's one of the fundamental parts of it because you have to set the budget, so you have to know what it's going to cost to make the film that you envision, and then you need to raise that amount of money, and then there's all kinds of record keeping that goes with it. And so that's the primary one. It's kind of like knowing what kind of house you're going to buy and what your budget is for the house. It's the same with the film. You need to know what kind of film you're going to make and what the budget is. And so film budgets typically kind of fall in different ranges. So there's like micro films that are under $2 million, and then $2 million to $6 million is tier one, and then $6 million and up to 12 million is tier two, and then over 12 million to kind of like 14, 15 million is another tier. And the payroll costs are a big part of anything, so payroll tends to be at least a third of what any company, costs are. It's the same with film, so payroll is a big part of what it costs to make that film, and the level of what tier it is determines how much your payroll is. So the union rates are set by the tier.
So what would a normal budgeting sheet look like as far as finances go for a film?
So that's very interesting because they really detail it out. So if we were doing a household budget, we would have what our rent is and what our utilities are,
right,
and what our groceries cost and how much we're going to spend for gas and things like that. And films kind of do the same thing, but they have to break it out by what the art department is going to need to build all of the props, and
Gotcha.
what the locations are going to need to rent the places for us, and then how much we're going to need to for salaries. And those are all spreadsheeted out. And in the old days, it was literally done by hand on huge pieces of paper. And these film budgets were as big as a wall calendar, and we had little line items that you filled out the individual lines and kind of taped them up. And then any change you made, you had to change it all the way through. But spreadsheets and computers and stuff have helped us with that. But now what we have is it just kind of looks like a ledger, but we do it electronically. And every department has a number. So that's something that we've computerized, and it tends to be standard throughout the industry. So that's what we use in applying for grants, and that's what we use for fundraising and film tax incentives and things like that. So we have to list all of that out, and we know how much it's going to cost to feed our crew and how much it's going to cost to pay our wages, but also the fringes that go with the wages and the health insurance for employees, and how much we need for water bottle sunset.
Oh, that's a lot going on. So if you didn't know, it's a lot going on for film. So what would you say makes a set or a movie able to be financially successful? What would you say that entails, and what would it take for something
really,
like
really
that?
good story? So that's what we want out of a film. Is we want to fall in love with the story, we want to fall in love with the characters, and we want it to be very engaging. So that's why Avatar is a blockbuster. That's why some of the more true stories, like the upcoming Killers of the Flower Moon, that's a very gripping story. So the foundation of everything starts with a story, and if we don't have a story, we don't have anything. So that's our bedrock for everything that we're going to do. And then how we tell that story can be different. So it's like there can be different arrangements of a song, so we can make the song kind of peppy, we can make it kind of jazzy, we can make it folksy, or we can make it kind of a rock sound. Films are the same way, so we can do it very elaborately, we can do it as a period piece, we can do it as a comedy, we can do it as a documentary, and it's all the same story. It's just how we tell it and how we lay it out in moving visual arts.
Yeah, well, okay, so we know that there are a lot of creatives that are out here right now who would love to make films. And some people are making films. They're just grabbing their phones and just going, because it's the digital era. Everybody has a camera. Everybody has editing software on their phones now, from the smallest and simplest up to something big. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to really get into seriously making films and wants to really start planning out a budget? What advice would you have for them?
Oh, first of all, I want to applaud them, and then I want them to tell themselves every day, I can do this. So the fact that they've taken initiative and they have that in their heart, I would tell them to follow their dreams.
Yes.
and to begin building a portfolio. So they're going to need to show some work that they have done and have some documentation for that. And the fact that we can make an entire movie on a phone, and the fact that our phone now is a better computer that they had when they made the Toy Story movie.
Right.
It's more powerful. We have amazing tools, and that has really leveled the playing field and made it available. So hopefully people that might not have dreamed of doing this 20 and 30 years ago now feel that they can do this, and that the access is there for them,
Yeah.
and that there's entry for them. And I think that's very, very wonderful. So I would tell them to read very regularly, to watch a lot of movies, and to interact with creative groups that are doing this. And one of the things we have in Omaha is called Creative Mornings, and they meet once a month where creatives get together. NEAM, I think, is a very good group to get involved in,
Yes.
where they can interact with other people. And I would tell them to read very widely and just kind of keep track of stories.
I think that's some very good advice. So what advice would you have for them when planning financially? Everybody would love to get into, the entertainment industry, doing a lot of array of different things, but we really don't think about what it entails when it comes to the financial part of it. So a lot of people come in unprepared. I was one of them. Yes, I was.
Weren't we all?
But we dream big. So what advice would you have for them when it comes to like setting up that financial plan to really just get everything going and get everything accomplished?
There are a lot of books available, and this is actually quite a good, this book itself is quite a good book, and it's still used. There's a lot of online resources, so if they would Google, putting together a film budget, but they need to kind of think on a very detailed level down to how much, I'm going to need to provide craft services for my crew. I'm going to need to provide maybe some lodging for my crew. So they kind of need to break that out. And then I would tell them, don't be afraid to ask for money,
Look, don't be afraid to ask. Money is definitely something I would tell everybody. It doesn't matter what's going on, honey. If you need something, ask for it. Go get it. So you're in accounting. What are some things that you would advise against when it comes to the spending? Are there some things that take precedence over others that you really need to pay attention to before you just jump right into starting paying the actors and paying for film crews and things like that? Can you explain what would be the best way to go about checking things off on your list when it comes to financing the film?
Okay, so I would remember what my grandparents told me and what they came out and said: one hand has need and one hand has want. Let's see what you get. So I would advise filmmakers to think of what they really, really, really need. So do we need designer clothes, or can we get them from the Goodwill? Do we need to deck out the entire room like an 1800s mansion, or when we're filming this, so do it with intention. When we're filming this, are we only going to see this corner of this room? So we only need to trick out a few square feet instead of, a 2,500 square foot room. And so if they're thinking about that, they can save a lot of costs on that way. The other thing I would recommend that they do is give feedback to people. So keep track of spending as they go, and then go to the department heads and say, this was your budget, here's where you're at with it, let's make some decisions on it. So, doing that almost on a daily basis, because that stuff kind of can grow quickly, and all of a sudden you're several $1,000s over budget.
Right.
But you need that money later on. So then you have to make decisions.
Most definitely. Now, when it comes to your experience and finance or accounting. What are some things you've run into that people you were like, no, you shouldn't have done that? Like, just as a cautionary tale, because right now it seems like entertainment is just booming everywhere. Everybody's in entertainment. Entertainment is everywhere, from your phone to your laptop. Everybody's doing it, but not everybody is doing it correctly and at a huge scale. Like, what are some no-nos that you really would, suggest people just hold off on versus going full throttle?
Right. I would suggest that they break everything down to begin with. And so one of the things that we still do, and again, this book is just an outstanding resource, but everything starts with a script and a story, and then within that script and story, we're going to have props, and we're going to have wardrobe, and we're going to have locations. And so what they used to do is kind of go through and color code it. Now we do that. There's software that does that for us, but so I wouldn't get carried away with that.
Gotcha.
So again, we may want to have the 1800s dress, but are we only going to see the collar of it?
Right.
And then the other thing is put everything in writing, get deal memos, because what happens is that people.
What is a deal memo?
Oh, okay, a deal memo. So when we're going to hire somebody to do some work, we want to lay out what that work is, and we sign it. So the company will sign it and say, we want you to be a camera operator, we want you to be an actress, we want to use your home, and all of that is spelled out, and then clearly states what we're going to use and what we're going to pay, and then what the expectation is on the other side. So there's no misunderstandings.
Gotcha.
So as long as that's all written up and thought out ahead of time and recorded, that's just a good business practice, So,
yeah.
So I would recommend that they don't do handshake agreements.
Gotcha.
Or like, oh, I know, it's okay, we can use my grandma's house. Well, maybe grandma's having new siding putting on when you're going to film, So
that's not very effective.
And then you're scrambling. So I would recommend that they don't count on things working out. I would recommend that they do have a plan for it, but and that they develop the ability to think on their feet, because the day you're going to shoot sun, it rains.
Yes. Okay, so the question I want to ask you, because there are a lot of people, there's students out right now. Neem recently got involved in the film festival 48-hour challenge, and there were a few people still in high school who were doing things. So what would you say a small, because matter of fact, before we get to that question, let's talk about kickback off film. A lot of people, when it comes to like film or music, things like that, they think they're going to get this huge kickback. What would you like them to know about that waiting process on that return from films? Because it can be a lengthy one. It really can.
It can be. I would say that their kickback they need to think in terms of 5 and 10 and 25 years.
Okay.
So what we do today is more like a savings bond that we can't cash in and we aren't going to see anything from for 25 years. It can take a long time to put it in development. It can take a long time to get it into distribution, and it can be a long time before money comes rolling in. And there is no really overnight success.
Right.
What they don't tell you with the overnight success is it was 25 years in the making. So
Gotcha.
think long term, and then always be thinking of their next project.
Most definitely. So people, it's a waiting game. We're waiting.
Always.
It's not grandiose. It is not microwave. But after that does come in, and a lot of times, especially with people that are really stepping into it now, it'll be a small production. So what do you think that a small production after that time period of waiting can usually gross, if it's a good film? What is the highest that you've heard that a small production has made?
A couple $100,000.
Yeah.
I've seen people pumping $2,000 into a film. Mostly volunteer labor, mostly volunteer everything, and they paid for a few sandwiches and the editing,
Nice.
and they were able to get it into distribution. So they were able to get it out on Netflix, and then they'll start getting pennies, back on it. But those pennies add up, and so over a year or two, they're starting to get checks, that aren't 35 cents anymore. They're $435, and so it can begin to add up, and then. I would also recommend that they strongly advertise and let everybody know that their film is available.
Most definitely. So people, advertising while you wait is the key. Definitely waiting and definitely advertising. Okay, so it seems like you've been in this game for a while.
This is true.
What are some things that have changed with the digital era, and what are some things that you missed that you think that shouldn't have changed?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So a lot of things have changed. The technology has changed by leaps and bounds. We used to do everything by hand,
Right.
and then we had spreadsheets for it, and now we have software and apps for it. So it's instantaneous. I've seen a lot better documentation and availability, so we can go out on the internet and we can look for a sample deal memo, a sample location release. All of those kinds of forms that we should have are available to us, and you used to have to know or buy those. So that's definitely available. Digitally, I started out things were filmed digitally, so the age of digital film was coming along. I see actual film coming back, kind of like vinyl is coming back, and so I'm excited because film has a different look and feel. So I think that's wonderful that we're now seeing film coming back. Also, some of the social platforms are getting involved in making films. So I worked on a project where Facebook was the financer for it. So Meta made a documentary about a grocery store here locally. And I've also seen TikTok making documentaries about non-traditional uses of TikTok, like in nursing homes.
Yeah.
And they have like 1.5 million followers. So
Right.
I'm very excited to see those kinds of things. So I would say we can always stay aware of what the changes are and use them.
Most definitely, most definitely. Now, my people, this has been a great interview. I want to thank you again, Ms. Griffith. I hope we can have you back sometime.
I would love to, and
Yes.
stay in touch and ask me any questions.
Is there any social media that you would like to promote out there?
I sadly don't have any. So
Well, if people want to get a hold of you, is that a possibility?
Certainly.
Is there like email or anything that you would like some people to, if they have questions or would like to hire you, hire?
It's the website.
Is there any place that you would like them to see you besides neem.com?
they can certainly contact me through NEAM. That would be wonderful, and I love what we're doing with NEAM, and I love being part of that. My email is iowawriter@gmail.com.
Awesome. Now, one question before we go, like how do you like NEAM? Like, what is your experience with NEAM so far?
My experience in watching it be birthed and watching it grow is very exciting. I think it's well put together. I think it is providing some foundations and some opportunities for people.
Definitely.
I think it's getting information out there that we need to get together. I think it's gathering up resources in the community, and I only see it as growing and growing and growing. I'm very excited.
I'm glad you said that because I'm in the right place.
Exactly.
For all my people out there, I want to thank you for joining us. I want you to thank Miss Griffith, Miss Debbie Griffith, for joining us today. We will see you next time on NEAM, Nebraska Entertainment Monthly. I am your host, Lejay, and we'll see you soon.